This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Potters, are you looking for high-quality equipment and supplies? Since 1974, Bailey Pottery Equipment, based in Kingston, New York, has produced equipment used in schools, universities, and art centers nationwide. Their gas kilns, renowned for ease of use, fuel efficiency, and beautiful results, are a global favorite. Bailey Pottery Equipment caters to all skill levels, offering a range of equipment and top brand ceramic supplies at discounted prices, all backed by their outstanding personal service. Visit BaileyPottery.com, the professional's choice for all things clay.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply, located in Dayton, Ohio, exclusive distributor of Jen Allen templates and Put a Lid on It t-shirts. We are a proud sponsor of this episode and the Brickyard Network. Find all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs, including the largest stock of GR pottery forms at CornellStudioSupply.com. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters, by potters.
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze. Well, hello, Matt and Rose.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello, Kathy.
Hello. So lovely to see you. What is happening?
I'm currently buried under books. We have been
really?
collecting books recently, and I've got to tell you, we do have one favorite new book that we've gotten recently.
I bet I know what that is. What is it, though?
It is the newest book by our producer, Ben.
Woohoo!
Ben
Yay.
Carter, the amazing Ben Carter has just put out his latest book, The Complete Guide to Low Fire Glazes for Potters and Sculptors, and then a whole bunch of other on the subtitle. It's a long title, Ben.
Yes, it is. But it explains everything.
It's comprehensive, for sure.
It does.
Mhm.
Now I've got the dirty little secret. I helped Ben on this a bit, so I've read this for a while, but I absolutely love this book. Now I know, first of all, we don't give enough love to our low fire friends, and I know I come across as a high temperature elitist, but
Yes, Lord Celsius. Yes.
His name is Lord Celsius, not Mr.
Lord.
Celsius.
No, I didn't receive this temperature land grant out of nothing. It was passed down to me by my father, Lord Celsius the First. But no, it is, we do, it definitely need to pay more attention to our low fire friends, because it is an important part of ceramics making and history and tradition. And there are people making great work at low temperature, much less the sculptors and the potters. And Ben really has put an amazing amount of work into this book, and I love it, Ben.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, graphically, it's gorgeous. The photos are amazing. It's got, history. It's got a wide range of different contemporary artists that are, and I think just in the title, potters and sculptors, which is really nice, so it's not, necessarily just for functional work. It's for everybody. And it's very overarching in that regard. And I had already bought it, and then I got a complimentary copy that Ben sent for the studio. So I gifted it to one of our young staff members who is just been like the low fire, like, hey, what about us? Because our studio is very cone 10, cone 6 heavy. I've always wanted it to be more diverse. And we're using this to study over January break and hopefully get some new stuff in.
the low fire we don't give enough love to, because for everybody, for my the way I am viewed, my studio is actually low temperature. I was a low temperature sculptor all the way through grad school, right? That's what I was always doing. And low fire can almost be more perplexing than anything else, because when you're working at high temperature, recipes kind of make sense and you sort of see all the same materials, and low fire seems like chaos. Like, it just seems like there's nothing that relates to what folks are doing there, versus what folks are doing at high temperature. And I think what Ben does really well is to sort of open up that conversation and go, no, it is sensible. It totally makes sense, and you can work with it, and you can make fantastic things, and color and texture and all of that. And especially, like I said, Rose and I have been going through a lot of books recently, and it really does have a clarity and a vision that actually I've found sort of lacking in a lot of the other books that we've been finding. Especially a lot of the books for people just trying to get information, that a lot of it's, it can be coming up a little bit lacking. And so, Ben, you really did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's inspiring. And coming from the community standpoint, I remember when I was a clay baby and I worked at the 92nd Street Y studio in New York City. And what they would do is during the school year, they would have all stoneware and porcelain, high fire. And then in the summer, they would alternate. One summer would be porcelain and one summer would be terracotta. And the terracotta summer when I was working there, that was the summer that changed my life, because I met Linda Arbuckle. And I knew that that was the person I wanted to work with, regardless of what kind of clay she used. So I've been thinking about how you incorporate all different clay bodies successfully in a community studio. Ben, have you come across one that does that well?
No.
No?
No.
Well, may I be the first? Yeah.
Actually, Odyssey Center for Ceramic Art in Asheville is very friendly, but I think it's because they had high water, which was right down the street. So the students could literally use anything they wanted, low, medium, and high. And there are some college programs. I mean, like your program, if someone brings terracotta in there, they're not going to get beat up and thrown out, right?
Oh, no. We have it. Yeah. Okay. We just don't have enough interesting glazes. I mean, it's like clear, amber, or Meolica. That's it. So this is going to set us in a whole new direction.
Well, that was one of the goals for the book, is to show people that there are contemporary glazes that are low fire. Because like you mentioned, amber, everyone makes amber because it hints back at the iron saturated lead glazes of years of old. Well, that's a historical context, but what's the equivalent of that now that one doesn't have lead? And also does everyone need an amber pot? Maybe not. Maybe we need
what?
A purple pot or a pink pot or whatever you can get at low fire.
Oh, you're blowing my mind. My goodness. Well, anyway, everybody go definitely take a look at it. Get it on your shelf. It's really worth having. So
Absolutely.
All right, kids, are you ready? You got your thinking caps on?
Oh, I hope so.
I forgot mine.
Oh, darn it. All right. Well,
he's got his dunce
under the
cap on
desk
today.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have some questions once again from all across the globe. And our first question comes from Sarah from Wales. And Sarah has a question about underglaze and glazing.
Hello, for Flux Sake Podcast. This is Sarah calling from Wales in the UK. I have a question for you. Why do we need to glaze anything? I guess I'm thinking, if I make a mug and I slip decorate the outside of the mug, can I just leave the outside bare? I'm guessing I glaze the inside. And I guess a wider question really is about do we need to, in what situations do you need to glaze something? And when can we just leave it unglazed? I'm particularly interested when you are adding slip decoration or underglaze to clay, and in what situations that might need a glaze over the top. Thank you. Love the podcast.
Oh,
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, sculpturally, anything goes, you know.
Yeah.
But so I'm guessing what she's getting to is when using functional items, so referring to that inside outside.
I would say your sculpture's not going in the dishwasher, so who cares?
Oh, you
Let's
don't
hope
know.
Oh, we know Kathy's fast cleaning strategy.
It really is, too.
I mean, sometimes it's the only thing that'll work. I mean, really, who wants to dust all those pots? Just stick them in the
Exactly.
dishwasher,
That's what I
right?
do. I
Come
stick
on.
everything in the dishwasher. Absolutely. I can't lift that Swiffer. That's heavy.
We have test tiles all over the walls of the workshop. We have these big display walls, and at some point we posted pictures of on social media. It's like, that's got to be a bummer to dust. Now it's just like, dust? What?
What is this dust you speak of?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the underglaze too, though, or like, because there's some slips that are vitrified that could be unglazed.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, Kathy, you're the underglaze meister around here. Do you ever leave
Yeah.
anything unglazed?
You know, I don't very often. I do like at least a really thin glaze on it. And that is more often because I'm not using like a true porcelain. So the color of my Cone 6 body is, it's kind of a creamy tone to it, and just a little bit of glaze kind of perks that up a little bit, and helps the contrast. But I mean, I've been around artists like one of my favorite artists, George Bose, who's a Texas artist. He did a lot of work with Amico velvets on the outside of pieces and just glazing certain areas, but always did provide a liner glaze. And I think that was that time period where everyone was pushing the Amico at least, or and other products up in temperature and saying, reading that label and like, I know they say '05, but what would happen if? And you find that like, at the time in the early 2000s, it's like electric blue would basically turn into a glaze at 6. And there was leaf green. That was a beautiful matte glaze, And so as long as you tested everything, you were good, because they don't all work the same. Teddy Bear Brown does not like Cone 6, and that's period, end.
I think you have some experience there.
I
Huh?
do. Yeah. We've been around the block a couple of times. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's true, Sarah. You don't have to glaze over the underglaze, with one big caveat. And that's the question of whether or not that underglaze is going to be relatively vitrified at temperature. And I know we talk about vitrification all the time, but underglazes are really just slips with stains generally added to them. And they do vitrify to some degree, if not totally vitrify. But you never know what that degree is unless you test it.
Because you could have an underfired body and a vitrified slip.
Absolutely.
You could have that, yeah.
Mhm.
Or
100%.
vice versa. So yeah, it's a slippery slope that you can run into.
Slippery, but bump. And that's why you often see when you get we'll say different application between raw clay and underglaze. That happens because the clay body and the underglaze have different levels of absorption, because even at whatever firing state they are at the bisque, they're going to have different levels of absorption. And we've seen that before with some of our consulting clients, where they will get radically different levels of fired qualities when they try to go slip, non-slip, slip, non-slip, or underglaze, or whatever. But if it is vitrified, yeah, you don't have to glaze it. There's a whole history of...
Yeah, there's a history, but there's also contemporary artists who do that right now. I just used your mug this morning. It was Kelly Justice. Peter Pincus does it. There's a lot of artists who use colored slip that aren't glazed at all.
Kelly's a great example. And it really looks like a unified surface. And yeah, we haven't noticed any absorption from those whatsoever. And then there are the people who I haven't seen anybody do it with underglaze, but I know there's definitely people Like Ian Childers does it to his feet, and Josh Smith does it to pots,
yeah.
where they will polish vitrified pots just to knock down the surface. Because the reason why clay doesn't feel smooth is just because it still has a textural surface, like it's still sort of mountains and valleys at a microscopic level. And when you knock down those mountains, you just get to glass and you just get a smooth surface, and it's fully vitrified in that case. For me, it's always the question, and again, Kelly Justice is a great example of doing this, of does it feel good enough on your lips when you are drinking from it? And that's a hard one, because minor amounts of smoothness will feel uncomfortable on your lips. We talk about this all the time with matte glazes, that you can get glazes and, descriptions of semi-matte or satin or whatever, but there are glazes that you can make that are very heavily crystallized matte glazes. And they crystallize so much, even though chemically they're fine, from a functional standpoint, like I don't want to put my hands on it. It feels so weird, much less put your lips on
Kind of
it.
like pulls your skin a little bit when you rub against it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think of like the more refractory colors, like the pinks, and thinking of peach. That is almost like got a sandy texture to it. And I mean, you just can't say enough. Even me saying, oh, electric blue does this, or leaf green does that. I've been meaning to do a whole test series again, because so many things have changed, preaching to the choir here. But like my black underglaze that I love so dearly and flows through my veins, I used to be able to put that on the bottom of my feet, and I didn't have any trouble. I put a little alumina hydrate and hot water, just a little film on the bottom, kept it from sticking. Oh no. No. And no amount
Not
will keep,
anymore.
like the kiln shelf is just coming. It is fluxing out more than I've
It's
seen
bonding to the kiln shelf.
Yeah. So, and we've tried everything. I even got like this kiln shelf paper that off of Amazon, and that really didn't, you fire it and it just turns into powder. I thought that was going to do it. That didn't work. So, yeah. So it's a bummer, but so, and I always tell people, it's like, oh, well, using underglazes. Can I put this on the bottom of my piece? It's like, well, some of the colors you can.
Yeah.
Well, but it's a very good observation about how much they flux or they are refractory. We've been working on a huge testing project where we've been trying to test every single stain that we have just in one base glaze. And it is fascinating to watch all these stains in the same base glaze. Some of them will dry up hard. When I say dry up, I mean they're under fired, even though it's the same base. And you talk about a pink. We've been going through the chemistry of stains, and like almost all the pinks are chrome tin, and chrome is refractory, and that is going to dry up the glaze. And that certainly can be a huge issue with the quality of your underglaze, it being underfired or anything like that. And so, yeah, that definitely can be a problem. But, if that's why you sort of have to test it, and we've talked before about doing vitrification testing on clay bodies. You could do the same thing for underglaze, just dry out a little bit on a plaster slab, fire it up, and then do that same absorption. We've got a YouTube video about it. I guess the one other thing that comes to mind, we're talking about glazing the inside, not the outside, because Sarah did specifically say, oh yeah, of course, glaze the inside. Be very careful for that, the dunting problem that is pretty common when you only glaze one side, not the other. And that's because, right, all of our materials have thermal expansion, which is how they expand and contract when we heat and cool them. One of the big catches is that if your glaze has a high thermal expansion and your clay body has a lower thermal expansion, that makes that glaze on the inside pulling inward. It's an inward pulling force, and it puts the outside of the pot in tension because the inside's in compression. And that can just make the outside of the pot snap. And boy, do we see that a lot, where people just glazing one side, not the other, because it creates that stress. It's a chemistry vitrification issue. If it's vitrified, it should not be as much of a problem, but definitely watch out for that.
And this could be a question for Ben. Does that happen more often in low fire? Because we're having an issue with that with a commercial terracotta body. People are Meolica crazy right now, but they're oftentimes not doing the whole outside, just like a little around the rim. And those are just crack-a-lacka.
It does. It's hard to put a percentage on it, but if that commercial terracotta has like, say, 4% absorption and it's really not that tight, it's going to dunt if you do the inside and not the outside.
Okay.
And I had that happen in a catastrophic way. And it sounds like a gunshot when that happens. I've experienced that in a workshop one time. So I think you got to get as close to vitrification as possible to keep that from happening.
Okay.
Well, and the point is of note that you said inside, not the outside. It actually should not be that much of a problem if you glaze the outside, not the inside, because then the outside is in compression. And so there's no stress discrepancy between the two of them. But because we have to glaze the inside, it becomes a much bigger problem because they'll always put stress on the outside with the clay, which isn't as tough as the glaze.
For Flux Sake is brought to you by us, Rose and Matt at Ceramic Materials Workshop. We created Ceramic Materials Workshop to be a place online to learn how clay and glazes really work, with none of the myths, rumors, and nonsense you may have heard out in the public. We've spent years working and researching and teaching at the best ceramic schools in the world to put together a revolutionary ceramic materials education. If you like what you've learned from us on For Flux Sake, you'll love what we have to show you at ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com. Dip your toes in with short courses like our online workshops, or dive headfirst into our full classes on glaze chemistry, clay bodies, and the ever-perplexing crystalline glazes. All at ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com. Join us and we'll change your studio forever. Now back to us.
Our next question comes from Beth, who's in Georgia. And Beth had a question about heat work.
Hello, For Flux Sake. This is Beth from Georgia, and I have a question about vitrification. Is vitrification a function of heat work or top temperature? So, for instance, if you ran your kiln to a cone 5 with a 20-minute hold, which reached cone 6, versus a cone 6 kiln, would this result in the same level of vitrification?
Speaking of.
Pretty sure that's called clicking your cones, right?
Clicking your cones?
Oh, yeah.
Have you not heard that one before?
No.
Yeah. It's when you fire to a lower temperature and then you hold it. So you're hoping that it reaches a higher temperature, and so you're using those witness cones, and the longer you hold, the more you cook them, so the more they're going to fall down and down and down. So it's not an accurate temperature the more you hold. So yeah, we call that cooking your cones.
Oh, cooking. I thought you said clicking.
No, cooking your cones.
Okay. It's not an ASMR type of thing. Okay.
No.
It's definitely one of the tricks with cones as a whole is that, they say, oh, cones aren't representing temperature, they're representing heat work. Yeah, they're also representing gravity, which is a hard thing. So the angle it's mounted at, how long it dwells, all that kind of thing is definitely a challenge with the cones. So yeah, Rose is right on that one. To Beth's question, vitrification versus heat work, and the answer is yes, just yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Next question.
Well, the longer answer is it's both. And one of the most important things to understand about a firing is that we are not firing to a temperature. We are firing to the completion of a chemical reaction. Okay. And that is what the firing is. Now we get very comfortable with, this is cone 10, this is cone 6, this is whatever. It still is the chemical reaction in the glaze and in the clay body done by the time we get to the end of the firing. And it is true that there are several ways to do it. And if you go and read the cone chart, which nobody wants to do.
Wait, don't you have like a pocket cone chart that you just take it out of your wallet? Your photos of your kids. Oh, wait, you don't have that anymore.
I have the cone chart, but not the pictures of the kids in the wallet.
Wow. Truth revealed.
The kids are on the phone. They're easy. But yeah, so what the cone chart tells us is that you can fire slow and low or fast and hot. And that really is the big deal. And that's why when you look at the chart, there are those three different columns. They're telling you can fire at this rate of firing, the second rate or the third rate of firing. The catch is that you really do need to stick to those. And boy, let me tell you, we talk to people all the time who are like, oh, my firings are inaccurate. My firings are inconsistent. And my first question is, are you following the guidelines of the cone chart? Because I follow the guidelines of the cone chart and my firings are always dead on, even, and consistent. But I think people get real interpretive, like it sounds like Beth is, about what their firing is. And that's why people get really weird results. But again, if you look at the cone chart, the first column says, I'm going to say it in C, translate to F for all you F people, 15 degrees C per hour, 60 degrees C per hour, 150 degrees C per hour. And when you read that says heating rate asterisk, and the asterisk says heating rate during the last 100 degrees C of the firing. I know that one, that's 180 degrees F. And what that is saying is that if you fire at that rate, 60 is usually what most people do, quote unquote, medium, for the last 100 degrees, that is going to be the chemical reaction that equates to a cone 6. Whereas if you fire at 150 degrees C, you're going to have to fire to 1243 to get to cone 6's chemical reaction. And that's just the important detail. So then it comes down to the question of a dwell and dwells. I don't know what to say about dwells, because what Rose said about cooking cones is also true. We have looked a little bit at the chemistry of a dwell and what it means. And yes, a dwell is chemically similar to firing hotter. That part is true. How much hotter becomes controversial and how effective that heat actually is. And for me, it sort of leaves me in two states. One is, well, just fire hotter, everybody. Like, it really is that simple of an equation. But why would you be doing these 20-minute dwells? And the only reason you really should be dwelling is your kiln is uneven. If you know for a fact that your kiln is uneven, then sure, a dwell will let it normalize. But say you've got a kiln with two thermocouples. Well, the whole point of the two thermocouples is for it to even out the heat on the way through the firing. So by the time you get to peak temperature, it should be balanced because it's reading the top and the bottom. And so that sort of eliminates the need for a dwell. So for me, at most, I'll put a 5-minute dwell just for consistency. But 20 minutes, if you're going to be holding for 20 minutes, just fire it hotter. And I know people are really afraid to program their own firings, but all those pre-programmed firings, they're just numbers. You can read it in the back of the manual for the kilns or for the kiln controllers of exactly what those programs are. And even when we talk about, 1222 is cone 6. Yeah, it is, but it depends on heating rate and, all of those types of variables, so that at the end of the day, are you completing the chemical reaction? Are your glazes done? And it really does come down to it. And again, I really would love to get people to shake free of this addiction to, well, slower is better or whatever. Again, let's go back to that cone chart. 15 degrees C per hour for the last 100 degrees. That's 6.6 hours for the last 100 degrees of the firing. But yeah, for cone 6, it's only 1185 as a peak temperature. People are like, oh, well, I'm saving energy or stress on my elements because I only have to fire to 1885. No, you are not, everybody. Not in the slightest. Because what you're doing is you're keeping your kiln exceptionally hot for a long period of time. And when you turn on your kiln, there's no variation in the amount of electricity that's going through the elements. Either electricity is on or electricity is off. So to keep it firing for a long period of time, all you're doing is keeping it on for longer to keep it hotter and to keep that heat in there. Whereas if you fire faster, yes, does the temperature that you read go to a higher number? Yes, but you're firing for a lot less time and actually using the elements less and putting less stress through them. And so it really is more of a psychological thing than anything. And like those slow firing specifically are for bricks, because brick firings take days because they're firing literally a wall of bricks. But if you're just firing
a big mass, a big cube of bricks, like
solid,
dense. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're just firing, like, just complete the chemical reaction. But boy, if I could like magic wand everybody, just follow what the cone chart says and call that your temperature. Don't try to get interpretive about it. It's not as helpful as you think it is. Oh, I left Kathy stunned.
So Beth, go read your cone chart.
I know. It's like, hold your cone chart near and dear to your heart.
Don't lose that wallet one.
Well, it's yet another thing that I've gotten as a bonus to my life from being part of this podcast is now when I look at our cone packs, I'm like completely suspect. I'm like, well, what angle are you? Cone one, it's like, I don't know. It's like we're having like cone pack making drills and it's crazy.
It's no joke. When I'm sure I've told this on the show before, but back when I was an undergraduate, my sophomore hand building class, RTA Carlo San Marco.
I remember him.
Oh yeah, Carlo was our TA, and he taught us the demo on making cone packs. And he came out there with a protractor, and he was literally like putting the cones up at an angle. And we're all being there like dumb 20-year-olds and snickering at him and being like, "Oh, that's so dumb." Why? No, he was 100% right.
He
was completely correct, because little wavering in the angle of your cone is going to screw up your reading, and then it doesn't make a difference. Like, it doesn't make a difference. And, I love cones, but they have major faults.
They do. Like, we watch in our cone 10 cone packs, like now, just one will just fall over. It's not like that the cone pack is blown up or anything. It'll just want to go in a different direction. And I know they're put in there right. It's just keeping you on your toes. So, well, speaking of keeping us on our toes, we are going to have to answer all these other fabulous questions the next time we see each other. But until then, Matt and Rose, farewell.
See you, Kathy.
Arrivederci, Kathy.
Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week, and if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at ForFluxSakePodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time, and when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system. Beep. Well, we can make it the Kathy and Rose podcast.
I know.
Should we go on to the next question?
We've been waiting, Ben, for our opportunity. So
we don't need Matt. Come on.
We'll just give our best guess.
Exactly. Yes, sure. That sounds right.
Yes. It's called the That Sounds Right series of For Flux Sake.
That sounds about right. Oh, my God, y'all.